So this Shabbos Parsha Shlach is also Chav Chesivan, and the last Farbrengen, the last time that we heard the Rebbe Leis Ata on this Kriyas of Shabbos Chav Chesivan, Shabbos Parsha Shlach, was Tavshin Mem Tes, and it's a Sikha that we're going to be learning today. A very, very Geshmak Sikha. I would say it's a Yesedistik Sikha, a historic Sikha. So there's no way of this is all subjective. But if you maybe made me make a list, what are the top 50 sikhs that Lubavitcher has to know? So I'm sure every single person would make a different list. But if I was making a list, this would be on my list. Parsha Shlach Tashmam Tes, a very sadistic sikha in terms of the Rebbe understanding of the world, of our avodah, of shlichus, and how we bring Moshiach, a connection obviously to tonight's class. So just a little akdama. So now the Rebbe arrived, Tavshin Aleph, Nisei Nisim, the Rebbe arrives in New York on Chav Chesivan. It was a Monday or a Tuesday that year. I don't remember exactly. But for many years, Chassidim did not know about this. We did not know the exact date when the Rebbe arrived in America. Now, Yom said that the Rebbe arrived in Sivan Tavshin Aleph. That was it. And then the early Tavshin Mems was started being printed the Igris of the Fidik Rebbe. And one of the Igris of the Fidik Rebbe dated on Chav Chesiv and Tavshin Aleph. You have the Fidik Rebbe notifying someone, if I recall correctly, one of the Askanim, one of the lawyers who was involved in the Rebbe's Hatzalah, that today the Rebbe arrived. So at that point, I think it was around Tavshin Mem Gimel, that's when Chassidim found out that the Yom Tov of Chav Chesivan, not the Yom Tov, the Tarikh, the date, what happened on the date. Is it a Yom Tov? Is it not a Yom Tov? Okay, so already, right away, there were many Bachrim, they would make a Farbrengen, Chav Chesivan, but to go and to have the Breit Guy to decide something becomes a real Yom Tov, a real Yom de Pagra. That didn't happen until Tavshin Mem Vav. So actually, this year, Tavshin Pei Vav is going to be 40 years. 40 years, Tavshin Mem Vav. 40 years since the first time that Chav Chesivan was celebrated with Agresiv Harnam. What happened under two Bachrim that year? I think one of them was Greenberg from Alaska, if I remember correctly. He was now the Shliach in Alaska. Another one. And they decided, again, Chav Chesivan that year was a Shabbos, that they're going to make a big Farbrengen, Isfadus Rabasi in 770 on Matzah Shabbos. And they hung up a sign on the back of 770 and the Ma'ir of Vivant of 770. Back then, the Ma'ir site was bleachers. On top of that was the wall. Isfadus Yom Habayr. And people went over to them, you're crazy. How's the Rebbe going to take this? Is the Rebbe going to Kabbalah? Stomach you think. And the blessing backed up. Sorry. I'm talking about the Meretweg and Chav Chesiv and Tavshin Mem Vav. Arboim Shana. I don't know if that was a Tunuas Bittul or Tunuas Hamfloa. Sorry? I don't know if that was a sign of being Mevat what I was saying or being Mafdi what I was saying. I'm not sure which one it was. Anyways, the bottom line is then at the end of Farbrengen, the Rebbe would give up mashke. People would give mashke beforehand for anything thing that's coming up, Farbrengen, a dinner, a psapula. So they wanted to get mashke for this Farbrengen, but the Bachrim didn't have the chutzpah. The Bachrim who margin this Farbrengen didn't have the chutzpah to go and to bring mashke and to stand in front of the Rebbe and to start talking about this Yom Tov Chav Chesivan. So, and I think they asked Rabbi Yoel, and Rabbi Yoel wasn't naskim. And so they asked Meir Harlig if he can do it. So Meir Harlig said that he'll see. They gave the bottle of mashke. Let's see how the Farbrengen goes. Let's see how this works. By that Farbrengen, Tavshin Mem Vav was the first time the Rebbe was Moshiach, Chav Chesivan, spoke about it. And afterwards, by the Chalukas HaMashke, so the Meir Harlig went up. And when he was Machres, would be Farbrengen tonight, in honor of the Hatzalah of the Rebbe added the Rebbe said about Ishu Beisei, that the Hatzalah for Ishu Beisei. In this sikha, which we have over here, actually, if you look towards the end of the sikha, so the Rebbe talks about Chav Chasivin. Page 545. If you look at the last paragraph. V'amdeinu b'yem haShabbos Kodesh Parsha Shlach shechal b'Chav Chasivin shekvar nikva idei rabim miyisrael yem hisvadus v'kabalas hachlatas tevis b'chol ha'paulos tafatzis ateirev v'yadus mi'alas chutza u'kvar ro atitzois ma'yisvaduyis ele b'mais b'peil b'meshach yeser megimel shnei chazaka. This is the Gimel Shnei Chazaka. This is going back to Tavshin Mem Vav. That's the Gimel Shnei Chazaka. And the Rebbe Ha'ari, just time to note that if you look in Ha'ara 97, there it talks about Chav Chasivin, Yem Beis Chav Chasivin Heit Tavshin Aleph, Bein Nitzlo Kveik Dush Adam Urshlita V'Rabbanan Sasad Ganis, Me'emek HaBach HaRepoi V'Giu Tzleicha L'Artzes Abris. And you see it says there, Hametz L'Er. Let me tell you a little secret. I feel a little funny talking in front of Rav Nachman over here. Like he knows all these secrets and he's going to start correcting me also. But Hametz L'Er, it doesn't mean that the Rebbe wasn't Magiah. Is that correct? That went in. But whenever there was Kvei Kedushas Admur Shlita, you can't have in the Rebbe's actual Sikha Kvei Kedushas Admur Shlita on himself. So it'll always be a Meitzler. So for example, whenever there's a tziyun to a letter from the Rebbe, so it'll say Michtav, let's say that date, and then they'll have a Shuli Agilian and Nitfas Beigres Kedush Kvei Kedushas Admur Shlita, this krach, this page, ha Meitzler. So that's whenever you see a Meitzler, that's what the reason why I have a Meitzler, because it has Kvei Kedushas Admur Shlita over there. Anyways. Let's start a little bit of that. So here we have Shabbos again, Chav Chasivin Tavshin Mem Tes. And this Fabringen, once again, the Rebbe is very, very much Moshiach is the Chav Chasivin, the greatest of Chav Chasivin. But Hanagel Yonenu, and we'll get back to Chav Chasivin later in the Sheikhis to that, the Rebbe starts talking about the inyan of the Meraglim. Now, the inyan of the whole story of the Meraglim is a Sipur Achi Tamua. There's someone who's a Lubavitch here today, member of Anash, an esteemed member of the Anash, who wasn't always a Lubavitcher. He actually went to Litva, grew up in a Litvischer house and went to Litvischer yeshivas. And I heard from him, he told me he became a Lubavitcher around Tavshin Nun and Erech. And he told me once, well, how did he become a Lubavitcher? He lived in Borough Park. And one day, it's on a Shabbos, I guess it was either Shabbos Parsha Shlach or Shabbos Parsha Skeirach, he went into the shul. And he sees over there, lying over there, a Sikha from the Rebbe. Still in Nimshach today that we go around to the shuls and put out the sikhs from the Rebbe. That's something in my days in Yeshiva. That was something the Bacham did on Thursday night. We went to different shuls and put out the likut. Happens today. It doesn't happen today. What? It happens today. Sometimes you think there's no pula. He said he became a Lubavitcher from that. Why? Because it was the sikha from Chelik Dalid. He says he read the sikha, Shlach, and then he found Koirach. And he's like, for the first time in his life, the stories made sense to him. Such a pelodic story. The story, the whole story of the parsha. That the Yidden come suddenly after going out of Mitzrayim, and after the 10 Makkos, and after Kriyas Yamsuf, and after Kabbalah Satera. Suddenly they tie the Chazuk and Mimeno, they can't go in and push it. Al-Pi Pshat, it doesn't make any sense. Unless you learn Chassidus and suddenly everything is shazlight and everything. But we all know about that. We all know the famous question and the famous answers about Chassidus. But here, in this Sikha, the Rebbe is going to focus on some different questions. Rebbe says, it's a klotz kasha. I spoke to someone who was by the Fabringen, and he told me that he remembered that when the Rebbe finished asking the questions, and this Fabringen, Shabbos Parashat Shlach Tavshin Mem Tes, he thought to himself, the Rebbe dug a hole that's so deep, how is he going to get himself out of it? In other words, the questions are so good, they're so strong. How are we going to answer these questions? And I'm going to do these questions outside. Maybe we'll do a little inside, but we're not going to be able to do the whole Sikha inside. Maybe we'll do a selected time. It's like this. We know that the Eibishter did not command Moshe Rabbeinu to send Meraglim. To the contrary, the Seder was the other way around. The Yidden Vatikun Elai Kulchem, the Yidden all come to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they said Nishlacha Anashim Lefanenu, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, "Let me ask the Eibishter." So what does the Eibishter say? He responds. He says, "Shlach lecha Anashim," which, as you know, Chazal tell us what does that mean? L'daitcha ani eini mitzaveh yischa. I'm not telling you what to do. Do as you think. So Moshe hears that, and he says, okay, then stock. It's a good idea. This is not the first time this happened. It's not the first time that Moshe didn't know what to do. And he goes and he queries the Eibishter and asks the Eibishter, what do I do? What are some other cases or examples of this? Sorry? Pesach Sheni is a good one. Pesach Sheni, yeah, what's another one? Bnei Slavcha is good, but Bnei Slavcha happened afterwards. Pesach Sheni, Bnei Slavcha was in the Shnas Arboim. Pesach Sheni, not so much, the Eider Rav that he asked the Eibishter, we didn't even find. What? Sorry? Parshas HaNesim. That the Nesim brought, we had it 2 weeks ago, right? The Nesim brought Vayiviu, it's Lashon, they brought the Agolis, and then the Vayikrib was Menchasam. And Moshe didn't know what to do, so he went to the Eibishter. The Eibishter says, this is what you should do. By Pesach Sheni, he said, this is what you should do. Here's the first time. The Moshe Rabbeinu goes to the Eibishter, and he said, Eibishter, what do I do? And what does the Eibishter say to him? I don't know. I have no opinion on this. I have no opinion. Whatever you think. L'cheira, this should have been the biggest stop sign, the biggest red flag for Moshe Rabbeinu. 1 second. The Eibishter is not commanding. The Eibishter doesn't have an opinion on this. There's something not beseder over here. If it was a good thing, the Eibishter would tell me to do it. Pesach Sheni, the Eibishter told me. Charukas HaNesim, the Eibishter told me. It's the first time in the history that Moshe Rabbeinu suddenly gets the Eibishter saying, I don't know. L'daitcha. Tu du verstehst. And let's take a step further. Sorry? Zag.
Das wird die Nachmehre sein, even die nicht auch nicht still. Der Aaron ist sich der zu die Level. Es darf mehr sein als nicht so. Mehr red flag. Das heißt, der even die Level. Die Scheide ist sehr dramatisch.
Right.
Scheide ist das darf mehr sein nicht. Was tut es?
Ja.
Der even die Level ist gesagt. Die werden noch einmal dramatisch das der Gerät so even die Level ist Gerät. Der Befall nicht dramatisch.
Right. Right. Sicher is bekavana, but that's something he doesn't know. So, no one's running anywhere.
Das even das in sich ist der wird das even der perfekte Scheide ist. Grammar.
I'm almost at the Sechit, even in the Kuta Sichas, where they try to censor the drama, I'm also that Nechet. 2 Sichas that come to mind is the Sicha of Masi ben Charash, Remi, and then Zuhagar. In Chilik Tesvav. Shaila, what? Was? The house time for the Nachanat, the flex, Zuhagar, Zuhagar. You see, even in the Kuta Sichas, you see the drama over there. I'm almost at this. Yeah. Akapanim. You remember the Masi ben Charash Sicha? So you remember it was no Lamed, right? It was Lamed Zion from Sama. No? Lamed, yeah. Masi ben Charash? From what? Yeah. Yeah. Way before that? It's not in the Chofs. Okay, now we're mamish. Okay. No, Mazak, the people there by the Sikh also was a very. Right.
Auf Sieben, die Rebbe gehört, das ist Störung. Die Rebbe sehr witzig, was er wusste, Gold ist. Es hat gehört, dass er zwischen die Schuhe ist. Die ganze Rebbe gehört, wegen seinen.
The Rebbe talks about the Fidik Rebbe that is buried here. Is that mentioned that? Okay. Anyway, Akapana. Okay. Sorry for the interruption.
Sorry.
Anyways, so Ayikataina, that Moshe looked at the matzav and he saw, okay, what can be bad? It can only be revach. It can't be nothing can go wrong. Send them a Meraglim. Was can sein schlecht? What do we find out? What's the next thing that happens is that Moshe says, he calls Yeshua, and says, Kol Yeshiach matzas Meraglim. In other words, Moshe Rabbeinu, there's nothing to be gained because already the Eibush already said that it's Allah Eschem, right? Money Mitzrayim, let us table Rechava. The land is an amazing land. The Eibush is going to take them in. And there's a problem. There's Atzas Meraglim Madap Avarnan over here. So things could go bad. And the Eibush didn't tell you to do it. So why are you doing it? That's the second question. And then comes the last question. So, say the kicker. Okay, so Moshe sends the Meraglim. We all know that, as they say, the rest is history. And because of that, the Yidden, for 40 years, they're busy valgating in the desert. But then, finally, the next day, is ready to go on to Eretz Yisrael. Moshe is nostalgic. Yeshua takes over. And Yeshua, who was very, very familiar with the story of the Meraglim, after all, he was one of the Meraglim. What is the very first thing that Yeshua does? He sends Meraglim. Did the Eibusher tell him to do it? Take a look on page 537. Let's read some Divrei Harav. Yeshua, who says, Shenitzal matzas Meraglim, Yeshua was saved because Moshe davened for him, Kol Yeshiach matzas Meraglim. V'roa teitzah habilti retzuya mishiluach hameraglim. I have to translate every word. What's to say there over here? What? By the time you get the Shiur Dal, you know the Livra. Okay. Sorry? Some of you. Okay. Because of that, the whole generation had to stay outside. Yeshua goes and sends Meraglim. And also, once again, he's not commanded. The Rebbe, if looking at Order 25, interesting, the Rebbe says there, L'hoyer, Shablakuti Teira Mavur, Alter Rebbe writes Lakuti Teira, Al Derech Droshes Chazal, I guess Al Derech Droshes Chazal, Shebevadei Le'osa Yeshua Medaite. It's not a question, Yeshua wouldn't have done it without Raksha Hashem Yisbarach Sivo Al Kach. Aval, Pshuti Shal Mikra, Harizah Pirish Rashi, V'lei Matzino Hashem Yisbarach Sivo. Pshuti Shal Mikra, we don't find. Alter Rebbe Taka writes that the Eibush commanded, but that's not Pshuti Shal Mikra. You know, I think in Tafshin and Aleph, once again, the Rebbe goes back and says that the Eibush did command it. Okay, but at the end of the day, in Pshuti Shal Mikra, we don't find it. Back in the Pnim, he wasn't worried about the bad Titzah. Sending Meraglim the first time, he was one of them. And he was only saved by Yidei Moshe. So if we're puzzled the first time that Meraglim were sent, why Moshe Rabbeinu did it? The Eibusher didn't command him to do it. And even though the Moshe Rabbeinu had a chash that something can go wrong, I guess even worse, that 40 years later, talk about, to make a mistake once is Einzach, and to go on to repeat it, and Yeshua goes and does the same thing. The second time around, it ended up well, but that doesn't change the question. What was this Ksaf Kedaitach? What's your thing? So the Rebbe's answer says, we're going to do mostly outside with some Ketayim inside. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. Batel Ritzeincha Mepnei Ritzeinai and Asei Ritzeincha, which will last in Ki Ritzeinai. Yeah? Asei Ritzeincha Ritzeinai, Batel Ritzeincha Mepnei Ritzeinai. In this actually, the Rebbe learns it differently than almost every other place in Siddur where it's explained. almost the opposite. The Rebbe explains as follows. There's two madrigas in Avedis Hashem. The first madriga in Avedis Hashem is Batel Ritzeincha V'Bnei Ritzeincha. What does that mean? I have a Ratzin. My Ratzin is A. The Eibishter's Ratzin is B. So what do? Batel Ritzeincha. I'm mevatel my Ratzin. Push my Ratzin aside. I'm going to do what the Eibishter wants. I'm mevatel my Ratzin. That's nice. But then there's a higher Aveda. The higher Aveda is Asei Ritzeincha Kirtzeinai. That's not Pshat being mevatel your Ratzin, but that your Ratzin becomes in sync with the Eibishter's Ratzin. It's red aints. And this Sikha, the Rebbe is going to talk about the Maila of Asei Ritzeincha Kirtzeinai. Which brings to mind the joke. It's not my say that say jokes and I give shiurim, but I'm old. There's a joke which is Sai, it's a little funny, and Sai brings out a nukuda very strongly. Not like when you start a speech and you have to say the rabbi and the minister walk into a bar, it's not to make people laugh. Sometimes a joke has taken. There was this English guy, a British guy, a very wealthy person, and he goes off on vacation. This is many years ago. He goes off on vacation to the Bahamas. It's a 2-week vacation, and 3-4 days into the vacation, he gets a telegram. And the telegram has 2 words in it. Cat died. Long times they had telegrams. This is before all the other methods of communication. They went through cables under the ocean, and through Morse code they would send beeps, and you paid per word. So in a telegram, the nekuda was you wanted to be as short as possible. Cat died. The shock was incredible. He realized that his cat died. It was a telegram that he got from his butler. So Kemuv on the Vegan Pashat, he cuts his vacation short. He goes back to England, and there's a levaya, and there's some suitable a few days of avelus and grief and mourning, and probably therapy. And then he still has a few days, so a week and a half of the vacation paid. So he's going to head back to the Bahamas. But before he goes, he calls him the butler and says, "You did a starka avla, terrible thing." He says, "Do you know what happened? You almost gave me a heart attack. Cat died. Wasn't ready for that. The shock, the grief. So what should I have done? I shouldn't have told you about it." He said, "No, of course you had to tell me. So what should I have done?" "You should have written me a telegram. It would cost a few more dollars or pounds. You should have written, cat stuck on roof." And then a few hours later, he sent me another telegram. Cat fell, very ill. And then a few hours later, cat died. And this way, he didn't shock my system. Brother says, "Yes, sir." Guy goes back off to the Bahamas. Two days later, he gets a telegram. "Your mother stuck on the roof." That's Batel Ritzeincha. That's Batel Ritzeincha. Batel Ritzeincha means, we can call it Yosel L'Gelam, that you don't get it. It's not you, but you're Batel. You're doing what you were told, and therefore you follow it 100%. You follow orders and directions. That's at the end of the day, that is the Madriga Batel Ritzeincha. Asei Ritzeincha Kirtzeinai is that your Ratzin is the same. You're in sync, and you understand, and you get it, and therefore you're not following orders. You're on the same page. Or to put it, Meretzvek, that this year is 40 years. Koyim inish adaiti de Rabbi, which the Rebbe Kochsachin. What is Koyim inish adaiti de Rabbi? Is exactly this nakuda. Asei Ritzeincha Kirtzeinai, not Papa. To do what the Rebbe tells you to do, you don't need Rabboim Shnin. You don't need 40 years. That's not. You don't need Koyim inish adaiti de Rabbi. Koyim inish adaiti de Rabbi means that you get it. That the Rebbe says, that's what the Eibishter said, told Moshe Rabbeinu, Shlach lecha l'daitcha. That's what l'daitcha means. The Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, at this point, I trust you. I trust you. I trust Klal Yisrael. I trust the Meraglim. I don't need them. I don't need to. In the first years after Gershon Mendel went to Italy, so he once came to New York. He went to Yechidus by the Rebbe. And the Rebbe told him, I don't remember the exact words, although if you go to Levi Gerabak, I'll tell you the exact words. He says, how much longer do I have to hold you by the hand and lead you like a little kid? Tracht in Chabad, and you'll be mekabel to the Kabbalah. And the Rebbe says, in Torah mitzvahs, there are those areas in Torah mitzvahs where the Eibishter says, do this and do that, do this and don't do that. And then there's a whole other area. Divrei Rishus. But the Eibishter doesn't tell us what to do. The Eibishter doesn't tell us what to do. How are we supposed to know what to do? And that's a higher madrig. And that's where Bechira Chavshis is the ultimate Bechira Chavshis as Dafke and Dozinian, where there is no tzivui. And here is where the question is, the shaila is, do we get it? Do we know what to do ourselves? Or do we not know what to do? And let's look at Sifhei, page 538. Al pizah meturetzas hatmiya amura beinyan shiluach hameraglim. Shekadz baruch amar l'meisha shlach lecha l'daitcha ani eini mitzava lecha im tirtze shlach. Listen to Rebbe's words here. Not only was Moshe, what's going on over here? Maybe she's not telling me what to do. Moshe was overjoyed when he heard that the Eibush is saying, I'm not telling you what to do. He was overjoyed. That what does it mean? Basically, the Eibush was telling him, guys, you've grown up. That the Eibusher trusted that the das and the ratzon of the people sheyu masimim ma'atzmam the Ritzein Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Is it safer if the Eibusher tells us exactly what to do at every single moment? Absolutely. Because if we're left to L'daitcha, mess ups could happen. V'haraya. What? It happened, right? It happened. But it doesn't mean it was a mistake. L'daitcha is the highest reifen in Aveda. It's less safe, but it's the highest Aveda. So that there's a yemim, right? Hechiras has met by the heart and feared by the heart, right? Higher is Aveda b'kayach asmei. This is the idea of Aveda b'kayach asmei. This is what we're talking about over here today. And by the Rebbe, this was, and that's why when Yeshua, when it came time for Yeshua to go to Eretz Yisrael, he didn't say, "Oh, we made a mistake last time. Why am I doing it this time?" No, it wasn't a mistake. So what was the mistake? And the Rebbe explains. I could have really printed out Kitoim. The reason why I didn't print out Kitoim, I wanted everyone to have the whole Sikha. If you want afterwards, you can learn the whole Sikha. Shmak Sikha. It's a long Sikha. The problem with L'daitcha is that sometimes you can take L'daitcha too serious. That when the Meraglim heard L'daitcha, they're like, so we have to decide also if it can be done. That was a mistake. Because L'daitcha was never, that was never giving them the shus to figure out what to do. L'daitcha was to figure out how to do, not what to do. And this is a huge Seder Aveda, by the Rebbe in general. And by the whole Moshe of Shlichus is based on this Nakud. As the Rebbe explains, this is what we're talking about here. We're talking about Kibush Eretz Yisrael. Kibush Eretz Yisrael is the idea of making a dir b'tachtein. That's connection. That's why this is a Shiur Yanagul Moshiach. And our job, our whole Aveda in this world is to make the world into dir b'tachtein, and that has to be done in the Eifn of the Daitcha. Which is why every single shliach is sent to a certain place and told L'daitcha. And by the way, it's not only a shliach sent to a certain place. Every single one of us, the chidush of Deir Hashvi. And it's a big word. The chidush of Deir Hashvi is shlichus. When I say shlichus, I don't mean the one who comes and wears that the thing by Kinnis HaShluchim. Shlichus is a certain kudush. Shlichus is L'daitcha. That is what shlichus means. It's not for nothing that the name of the speech Parsha Shlach, and that is Chav Chasivin, as we'll see in a second. The Shaykh is Chav Chasivin. That shlichus is L'daitcha. But the Rebbe wants us to get it. And the Rebbe wants us that it should be asay ritzein chakir tzeinei. That we look at another Yid the way the Rebbe looks at another Yid. That our worldview is the Rebbe's worldview. And that we're doing things not because the Rebbe told me to, but l'daitcha. The highest avodah is l'daitcha because koin minish adaita the Rebbe. An interesting note. If you look in Igris, it's possible that the most common word that you'll find in Igris is lepella. Or bitimohin karasi, or such lashenis. Which, by the way, in 2026 it's very non-PC. A person asks you a shaila, and what do you say? Lepella shaila. Lepella shaila. You ask the question. You're supposed to say that's a good question. But here's the answer. Bitimohin. I'm shocked. Where's the shock? And in most of the places, not pshat that the Rebbe told the person what to do. And therefore, if the Rebbe, I told you 20 times. But if we understand what the Rebbe is trying to do, and the whole Avodah Derashvi, the whole Daitcha is all about, it makes perfect sense. The Rebbe's like, really? You have that question? Did you learn my sichas? You learned my mamarim? And you have that question? Ever happened you're watching a video, dollars, and a person goes by the Rebbe like a misnagid, and asks the Rebbe something really stupid. And you're like, really? That's like, you know what the Rebbe is going to respond, right? In a certain way, that's the way the Rebbe is looking. Really? That's your question? Do you not get it? If the Rebbe is what's what I'm looking for, a control freak, and busy, I'm going to tell you, do this, do that, do the other, and don't write cat died, right? Then, I didn't tell you Berachel bit chaktana what to do, then you don't know what to do. But the Rebbe is not trying to tell us Berachel bit chaktana. The whole mitzvah shlichus is you go off somewhere and you're not told what to do. Like, really, it's a ridiculous thing. You think about it. There is no template. Ad hayom hazeh. A person goes to a sedita shliach, and what's the rule book? What am I supposed to do there? How do I go figure it out? The daitcha. It's all the daitcha. The Rebbe is mekasher this, by the way, to the end of the parsha, the mitzvah tzitzis, where the whole mitzvah tzitzis are reshus, l'cheira. It's not even a tzivui, it's reshus. The biggest, the greatest is the reshus. When there is no tzivui, when there is a tzivui, kaviyachol, that's not you. It's not you. When someone asks you to do something, even if you do it, even if you have the bechira whether to do it or not, to a certain extent, you are being the yada arichta of that person. You're doing what they want. You're not doing what you want. Tzitzis, you don't have to do it. And that's why tzitzis is shkula k'nei kol ha'terah. It's the exact. This is masim to the Rebbe. The Rebbe speaks many places. The mile of a minig, the mile of hakafis, the mile of something that's not written. The mile of hider mitzvah. The inyanim where you express yourself. What does that have to do with chav chasidim? Let's do it. Let's read Eis Yud. Page 544. Ubechol hanal netesef eid yeser b'derenu zeh. B'derenu zeh nesgala shechedesh Tammuz uchedesh Hagula. Notice, b'derenu zeh niskala shechedesh Tammuz uchedesh Hagula. What do you mean niskala? That we should say, in b'derenu zeh chedesh Tammuz became the chedesh Hagula. This is gala. What's shot is that whenever there's a sikh in Tafshlon Beis, in the sikh of Chayisara Tafshlon Beis, the Rebbe says over there, that our day was Zecha, that the specialness of Chav Cheshvan was this Gala in our generation through the fact that the Rebbe Rashab was born on that day. Very interesting deal. Doesn't say in our generation Chav Cheshvan became special because the Rebbe Nishmal was born that way. The segula, the specialness of that day was this Gala to the Rebbe, because the idea of Megalgo and Schus Liyim Zakai. And whenever when something special happens on a day, it's the Yemek Hagarim. Or in the words the Rebbe uses, again, in almost every single minor, Vazman Grama. What is that? What does Zman Grama mean? Literally, Zman Grama. They get a mitzvah says Zman Grama. What does Zman Grama mean? The Zman is greater. Zman is greater. Mistam is always a Chedesh Gulus. The Skala Erst, Yud Beis Tammuz Megala, that's the Tchuna of the Chedesh. Which, if I could take it somewhere else, so then Chav Chesivin, as the generations went on, more and more of the specialness of different days was Nisgala. And if I said before, the Chav Chesivin as a Yom Tiv, so it's not only that it was Nisgala, but the fact that it wasn't dispersed until Tashmeva was also obviously Alt Pashkacha Pratis. So come taste that Chav Chesivin L'chayr is the second to last Yom Tiv that was Nisgala before Moshiach comes. What will be the last Yom Tiv? It was half a year later, Hey Tevis, right? So there's something about Acher Nach and Chaviv, and Yeshlema that both of them are very connected with each other in this Nekuda. What is Chaviv? So let's continue weiter inside. So Chedesh Tam Chedesh Gula Gula Shel Kektus Meracham Yad Morn and Nesi Derenu be Yud Beis Gimel Tammuz. Meshtes Bar Makamacher B'Derenu Zeh Deira Acher Shel Gula Terishnu Shel Gula Masila Kvar Teima Meina Gula Sid Seif Shem Revi Yihapok Tal Simcha. I did just let's not same Revi Yeshni Chagagula Shapel Achesh Achedesh Gule Nasa Chedesh Gula. Okay, they already said why talk with this Gala in our day? Because as we get closer to Moshiach. Right now, the month of Tammuz, the Iker day of the month of Tammuz, the would be Shivasa Tammuz. But Moshiach comes, it's going to be in a skala, it's only a Yom Tov. So as achana to that, we have the Gilui of Yud Beis Tammuz, which is Megala and the Tchuna of the entire month of Tzched Shagul. V'yesh l'kash zem chav chesivim, which is hakoyach tesivim. Teisef es koyach, leirak benegei l'kim shivu yatera, l'gam benegei l'haveda de birura elam. What is Chav Chesivin? The Sefes Haveda being Mevadra Elam Lasses Bar Lib Tachteina. I the Kibush Haaretz Hachim Shluch Meraglim Sachvadait. How we Mevadra the world? Chav Chesivin began the Haveda. The Sefes Koyach being Mevadra the Elam. Sheikara Bechedesh Tammuz Lachri Chav Chesivin. Interesting taka, by the way. Somewhere in the Sikh, I don't remember where. The Rebbe says that the day when was the Meraglim sent out? Anyone knows the date in the year when the Meraglim was sent out? Chav Chesivin. With the koyach of Chav Chesivin, then we have the next day, we have the koyach of L'daitcha. That comes to that, the koyach of L'daitcha, which is the inyan achi gadol. Chav Chesivin is behemshich to the koyach we get in Chav Chesivin. What is the idea? Let me do the first outside do it inside. What is the idea of Chav Chesivin? The Rebbe talks Chav Chesivin is the idea of that there's a davar tamuah from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe says that the Matan Torah was only in Chatzi Kader Elyon, and not in Chatzi Kader Tach. Chatzi Kader Elyon, if you count, if Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim is the top of the world, count of Alisa Alamakim, that's the highest place, Kaveh Mechal HaRatzis, so everything on the top, from, again, if Eretz Yisrael is the top, so everything is on that half, is Chatzi Kader Elyon, and everything underneath it's Chatzi Kader Tach. That includes America, Australia. The Alter Rebbe said, so Kabbalah, that that the Matan Torah wasn't there. What does that mean? The way the Rebbe understands this, Matan Torah is the Tzivuyim. Chatzi Kader Tachton represents the year with the original Tzivuyim. That represents the day of the Daitch. Where our Aveda Kaviyachal, there was no the Matan Torah. So therefore, where does the Aveda come from? It's the Daitcha. It's not that the Eibishter is telling us what to do. Chav Chesivin and bringing down Matan Torah into our world, into Chatzi Kader Tachton, you bring it into Nyani Harashus, Nyani where the Eibishter doesn't tell you what to do, and we have to figure out what to do. And that's the final frontier of bringing Moshiach, is this idea of a Daitcha. Yes, Shleimer, let's skip a paragraph. Yes, Shleimer. Shachilush tafotzas. The chidush tafotzas ateiru mayonis b'chatzi kader tachton kosher ma koyach l'siven. The sefes koyach leirak l'yom shnilu mantera alagam on yom shnis chashway the avidas b'tay yisrael b'efim d'lo daitcha. Hayil chalaz reini. K'mid didan afotzas ateiru mayonis gam b'chatzi kader tachton afal b'shemat teira loy hoya b'chatzi kader tachton. Ve'in zan is gala gam b'yoyim chav chesiven kam b'shon l'acher zeh. Sha'os ischila. What happened? Chav chesiven then began to nufa chadasha b'chzakas v'afotzas ateiru v'yadutz fotzas mayonis. Aidei kvik tusis mer v'cham yadmunas idreinu. B'yastei ha-meistes ha-merkazi machni yisrael kahas ha-merkaz nyan chinuch. V'nimshcha aveda the meiselu b'meshach eser shneisa v'achenis kvik tusis whatever. Adkan. Rabbi Fintzoff, quite minutes back to the land. Anyways, Kamud Nagam Pashat, that as we stand over here in the moments before Moshiach comes, it's incredible sikha. And also, it's a little of a, not that we're trying to end for the Eibishter in any which way, shape, or form. And now we're not that we're happy with the Eastige Matzav, which is Sineno Liris is Malkeno, but it's understood that the ultimate L'daitcha is happening right now. When the Rebbe isn't over here telling us, Begashmi is telling us, do this, do that, and the other, how do we know what to do? And that's the ultimate, in order to go into Eretz Yisrael, to have Kibush Eretz Yisrael, to have the Kibush Eretz Canaan, ultimate Kibush has to be Dafke L'daitcha. The Rebbe says, if you want, you can take a look. We're going to finish off now, but if you want to see interesting in the Kudan, this page 540, second column, Benegei L'Meisha, and footnote over there, and Ha'ar 51. Very, very interesting what the Rebbe says over there. Lakaponim, that's our Aveda. As we're about to go into Eretz Yisrael, there has to be this idea of Shlichus, the idea of the Daitcha, in order to go into Eretz Yisrael, in order to be Moshiach. We have to own it. We have to own what the Rebbe says. Own, to be in sync with what the Rebbe says, and not be that butler who's an unbelievable Kabbalah Selnik, but ultimately is missing the point. He's missing the Daitcha.